last month leading up to Mission Impossible Fallout, I have been reviewing the previous movies in the Mission Impossible franchise, and that brings us to the fifth film, Mission Impossible Rogue Nation. Now, this one was a fun one for me to rewatch because I haven't watched it since it was in the theater. I saw it 2 times on opening day, and I haven't rewatched it since. So this one was kind of like, in a lot of ways, the most fresh viewing of all the movies on this list. This was the one I by far have the least experience with. So before I dive into my full thoughts on it, if you love talking movies with people, so much so that maybe your family and friends think you talk too much about movies, that means you're in the perfect place because we love to talk about movies all the time. So join us down in the comment section. Tell us your thoughts on Mission Impossible Rogue Nation. Do you love it? Do you hate it? How does it kind of fall in the scheme of Mission Impossible movies? And this one in particular is interesting because the one that comes out this week, Fallout, is directed by Chris McQuarrie, who directed Rogue Nation. And this is the first time Tom Cruise has brought back one of his directors. They've always changed directors. And so this movie's kind of an interesting one. So what's your take on all of that fun stuff? I'd love to hear your take on all of it. Also, before I dive into all of this, I might have a redder nose than normal, and my skin might look kind of funky because I was mowing the lawn about an hour ago, and so it's Texas, allergies, grass everywhere, and so I was outside in the hot sun, so my temperature's not regulating right, and kind of got bad allergies at the moment. With that said, let's kind of dive into it, starting off with the good. And the thing specifically about this movie that I really liked, it was a change of pace from the previous Mission Impossible movies, is that more so than ever before, they tied the previous movies into the plot, into the central premise of this one. Normally, they've done the movies as these kind of standalone little stories, and there might be little elements that kind of tie them together. So the wife character has some ties into the fourth film from the third film. But beyond that, this is the first time you've had significant references to previous films besides relationships going into another one. And so right off the bat, you have this situation with Alec Baldwin in a Senate hearing, or I guess, was it a Senate hearing? Some sort of hearing, testifying to elements about the IMF, going back to the original film, references to Ghost Protocol. And I just really, like, right out of the bat, I was like, oh, this is interesting. And you appreciate it a little bit more because they've all been so standalone. So having a story that ties back has extra weight to it. It's a change of pace that's interesting, unique, and it creates a very nice dynamic for Alec Baldwin's character in that we haven't had someone that is kind of this character that's somewhat antagonistic and has knowledge of the previous films in a way that we have not seen before. And I very much dug that element about this movie. And that ties also into part of what makes this movie work, is that it has... That's a theme in the movie, is this sort of idea of, is IMF just lucky? Is Ethan Hunt just this character that comes up with insane ideas, rolls the dice, and just happens to get away with it? Or is he really that good? Is he that smart and that clever that they're able to make all this happen? Which goes back to, if you've got a team who built into the name is Impossible Mission, was it forget my F words, not the 4-letter one. That's definitely not that one, because that'd be an inappropriate title for a team. But so when you've got that in the name of it, Impossible Mission, you've got a situation where naturally they probably shouldn't just be lucky. They need to be that good that they can pull off a name like that. And they build that into the plot of this movie. So as you start getting deep into the second, leading into the third act of the movie, and you're having conflict in the team between Jeremy Renner, Tom Cruise, Ethan Hunt, about whether or not they can just keep rolling the dice. Is this the only way? Is there another way? Can they keep risking things? And it makes for a movie that has some very cohesive elements to it, whether you're talking about the story, whether you're talking about themes, talking about the history, its place in the franchise. All of that makes it an interesting way to, how do you take this franchise and go up to the next level? Well, we'll get into the stunt work in just a little bit, but you incorporate different types of ideas, different types of scenarios for them to work against, and that works really nicely. As I said, we're going to talk about the stunts, and this movie, I mean, it just finds a way to keep building on top of these action sequences and finding different ways to put Ethan in an impossible situation. So right out the gate, there's tension right from the beginning of the movie as they're trying to hack into something before a plane takes off, and you're like, all right, what's going to happen? What's going to happen? Like, how are they going to get hacked in time? And then they establish that they're having trouble hacking into it. And you have Ethan Hunt run out, jump on the plane. It helps that we know that Tom Cruise actually attached himself to the plane. And so the sequence just has this tension to it. And part of the reason him hanging on the outside of the plane works so well is they established right before this, they're having trouble hacking in. And those little details just make all of what they've done so well with all of these Mission Impossible movies, except maybe the second one, is finding ways in every scenario to have those little details. All the way back to the first movie where Tom Cruise is dangling down and a drop of sweat going down his glasses makes you tense and on the edge of your seat. And they're doing that in this movie in the exact same way with hacking a computer, tying that into our big tense stunt work. And you continue throughout the movie and you got sequences where you just have fighting action sequences in a new type of way where he's introduced to this new agent that he doesn't know who she is. Are they on the same side? And they start beating people up together. And so you see kind of this girl, very agile person doing a different type of fight choreography than we've seen in the franchise. And Ethan fighting along someone and being thrown off by it. This guy that doesn't get thrown off by anything. He's like, have we met before? That's a new take on the franchise. You get to the fifth movie and they're still finding those new details. Continue through the movie. There's a sequence where he's underwater and has to try and grab a hold to try and get this card in this underwater thing. And he's holding his breath, which anytime you're watching a movie and people have to hold their breath, what do? You most naturally, if you're like me, go and you try and see how long you can hold your breath along with them in the sequence. And once again, they find those little ways. If you're trying to have someone hold their breath, how do you keep making it tense? There's an arm moving around that knocks him around. There's these cards he's holding that he loses out of his hand. And so it just adds to that tension. That sequence that's so tense, you get out of it, he barely survives it, and we got a double cross that happens that leads into a car chase. And this car chase, flipping cars, smashing into things, people flying all around. And you're like, wow, this is really exciting. And they're adding little doses of humor about, what, weren't you just dead a second ago? And all sorts of little jokes in it. So we went from drowning or underwater sequence, car chase, and then it tops it off and adds this motorcycle sequence where they're zooming in and out between cars. I mean, just building on top of itself to just make this exciting film that we're watching. So from there, what the movie does, I think very smartly, is it changes directions. It goes from like action sequence, stuff we haven't seen before, flippy type kicks from woman lady, motorcycles, car chases, Tom Cruise on the outside of a plane. And we go into the third act, and while it does have some action in it, and certainly you got the showdown between Flip Kicky Lady and between the henchman guy in the movie, and we've got a foot chase, but really what the third act is it's not Ethan Hunt doing another crazy stunt, which even kind of ties back to the second movie where Dougray Scott's like, Ethan, I know him. He'll try some death-defying stunt to try and outdo me. That's not what it does. It shows the brains of Ethan Hunt, which goes back a lot to the TV show, which was about kind of gimmicks, trickery, masks, disguises, being the embodiment of destiny, whatever Alec Baldwin's great line is inside of this sequence that plays out so nicely in the movie. But it does the other side of Mission Impossible, which is the spy disguise type stuff, and ties it all together really nicely in a way that's like, oh, this is satisfying without needing to outstunt the rest of the movie. We had amazing stunts, and now we go to the brains part of the Mission Impossible sequence with more twists and turns inside of all of it. And one more thing to kind of throw in the mix, the overall plot of the movie I thought worked really nicely, because if you've got this secret good guy set of spies, what do you want? You want to have the evil set of spies. And that's a fairly common element within spy type movies, and they took a while to get to it. And I think this movie built a good explanation for why it exists, how it came about, and kind of how some of these things kind of tied together. And even the way the movie decided to use some of the IMF gets shut down again. We'll get to that in a little bit more than negative. But time changes. There's a actual time jump in this movie, which we haven't seen in the previous movies before, which adds this extra layer of mystery and gives extra weight to this group, the Syndicate, that shows that they've actually been out there doing stuff, and they're expanding in a ways of storytelling that we weren't able to do if we're telling a linear story that takes place over a matter of days. So all that works really nicely to craft a really nice, very strong Mission Impossible movie that fires on kind of all cylinders. From there, we will move on to the negative aspects of this movie. There's not a whole lot, and so even as I dive into these, knowingly, I'm going to say it's a little bit nitpicky of sorts, because it's a very strong movie, but I still want to mention the things that didn't work so well for me. First one is the main bad guy in it. I don't fully get what they were going for, because he always comes off. I've been trying to come up with words for it since the movie came out in the theaters. I'm like, this is a main bad guy? And the way he's written works, and even in individual performance, he's creepy and weird, but he doesn't fully come off like this intimidating bad guy. And maybe that's because they intentionally tried to play him against type, but I mean, he feels like he's supposed to be the evil accountant to the syndicate. That's kind of creepy and weird, or he's the evil, creepy henchman to our main bad guy. He doesn't naturally come off like a main bad guy, which maybe that's them intentionally trying to subvert expectations, and you're expecting somewhat like in Mission Impossible 2, which would be Dougray Scott, who's a little bit more traditional movie star, suave, leading man type qualities to him, except he's a villain. So he is kind of the evil Ethan Hunt of sorts, though Dougray Scott is not Tom Cruise's level, but these more similar qualities, whereas this guy comes off very different from what you expect. Maybe that's what they're going for. It'd be interesting to see an interview. Maybe some of you guys in the comment section have seen something like that, where they've kind of dug into why they went in that direction. It always seems strange to me. And maybe you guys want to tell me in the comment section, I'm just off on this one, or maybe you guys agree with me, like that was kind of weird casting of who they chose for that particular part in the movie. Especially because if you look at the movies, in the scheme of things, 1, 2, and 3 all have actors that, at least of their time, had very strong villain characters. So Dougray Scott was kind of this guy that was up and coming. If he'd been able to do X-Men, he might have gone to A-list. So he was kind of up on the rise. So you understand why he was cast. John Voight in the first film, of course, is John Voight. Third one, Philip Seymour Hoffman, widely regarded as the best villain in the franchise. Number 4, not as strong. It seemed like an odd choice. And then this one seemed like, even in the casting specifically, it was like, I don't understand. I just don't get where you're going with this, because the character seems stronger than what. And I don't want to pick on the guy, because it's not like it was bad acting. It's just this presence that he brings to it. I just don't feel it. I'm not feeling it. I mean, every time that opening, all 3 times I watched that opening sequence, or not, beginning of the sequence where Ethan's in the box and then it shows the guy standing there, I'm like, that's right. This is a weird direction to go with this main villain. I don't get what they're going. So that's problem number 1 I have with the movie. Problem number 2 is probably my biggest problem with this franchise in general, is that they keep going back to Ethan Hunt goes rogue, and Ethan Hunt goes against the CIA, and they 4 out of 5 movies up to this point in time, that's kind of what happens. And even the trailer for the next one indicates that there's like he's going against the CIA again. And they keep doing that. In which case it feels kind of like, all right, once again, it's a Mission Impossible movie. He's got to go rogue. He's got to go against the government. And I don't think that that's the best way long-term to do a franchise. But at the same time, somehow it's working for him. So I can't complain too much, because I don't know which one of these movies I want to take that element out of it, but it's worked for him. This is a great movie franchise. And I don't want to say this one too much, but on the plot in general for the movie, another problem I have with almost all these movies is there's a certain point which they get very convoluted. And it's looked different at different points in times in the franchise, but it seems like with the later ones, it turns into they're trying so hard to build the plot around these amazing action sequences. Like they've got a whiteboard and they're like, Tom Cruise on a plane, Tom Cruise on a motorcycle, Tom Cruise underwater. And then they have to find a way to get to each of these plot points. And so then it seems like we're jumping around from place to place to place a little bit more so than maybe to have a streamlined, clear plot makes a large amount of sense. So there you have it. That's kind of my quick take on the movie. This is a great blockbuster. And just period, it's a great blockbuster. It's a great way to do a sequel where it feels true to what's come before, but it builds on it, where you're adding in the Rebecca Ferguson character, who just a great addition. Like immediately she was in it. She's like, what? Why didn't we know who this person was before? They're finding ways to, bring back Simon Pegg and Ving Rhames and give them kind of new roles in it. And even kind of Jeremy Renner's role is a little bit different from the previous movies, which was fun. Adding Alec Baldwin into it in a totally different type of character that's kind of antagonistic, but not really antagonistic. You think he might be a bad guy, but all of the ways they did it, this is how you do it right. I'm kind of in that category right now of pretty safely saying Tom Cruise is the greatest movie star of all time. Movie star. Not the greatest actor, and I think he's a great actor, but like true Hollywood entertainer. A guy that when he has done acting, he's done great acting, but is a guy that's just a enjoyable personality that can pull it off, that delivers, that goes all in. I think I'm in the Tom Cruise is the GOAT category, greatest of all time. And this is one of those movies that just really started to solidify that. When he was in his 50s, he's like, strap me to a plane. You go, this guy's all in. This guy's the real deal. So if I'm going to score this one, I think for the genre, I got to go with an A on this one, and I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10 on entertainment. I had a blast with this one. It pulls on, it fires on all cylinders. It does everything it's supposed to do with this genre. Just a few kind of nitpicks on some story things and kind of villain type things, but I mean, it really does work. I am so excited to watch the next one. Potentially, I think I'm seeing it tonight, which would be amazing, in which case tomorrow or day or two from now, you'll be getting my review for Fallout. Hopefully that's going to happen. Anyway, tell me your thoughts down below in the comments section. I would love to talk movies with you. Hopefully we can have a nice, friendly conversation down below. It's kind of like getting to talk movies with your friends without leaving your house. Down in the comment section. And if you're new to my channel, please consider clicking that subscribe button. I do movie reviews, TV reviews, ranking videos. Over this weekend, I did a whole bunch of trailer reactions because of San Diego Comic-Con. Key thing is I don't want to just talk about movies. I want to talk about movies with you. So please join me down in the comment section. Let's have a lively discussion. And as always, thank you so much for watching.